Well, it's that time again, that time when we step into our favorite virtual bar, grab a table, and at this time discuss entertainment and Christianity. I'm joined by Greg, Ken, and Richard, and I'm your host, Chris, and this is Three Pastors Walk into a bar where they're showing Christian movies.
Quote, unquote.
Is that a thing?
I think that's an oxymoron.
Yeah, maybe.
Or an enigma.
An enigma.
I think enigma would fit.
Yeah, paradox.
Mm.
A paradox, as it were. So, The Shift. Some of you guys have probably heard about it. Most of these guys have gone and seen it. I'll frame all of this off with this, right? I haven't gone to go see it, and I'll tell you why. I don't. When I see a Christian movie or a Christian film come out or a Christian series come out, I'm never stoked to go watch it because I'm so jaded by the Christian movie industry's lack of production value that it irritates me when I go to see them. They're usually so badly done that you have to dismiss those things and seek for the thing that is really good. Like, I'll give you an example. Fireproof. Script was really well done, had great messaging. You have to go with the anticipation of receiving the messaging. Because other than Kirk Cameron, the acting was meh. And the production value was, So it wasn't like, it's kind of like you watch it because you want to support them. That's the reason you watch it. And it has a decent message. And I guess that's probably a ramification of being, brought up in a society with movies that have really high production values.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that don't have high production values usually end up doing things wisely in that it looks like it has high production value as opposed to looking like it's just done as shoestring as possible to get it done. So that's kind of the reason I haven't gone to see it yet, because I know it's made by Angel Studios, but there's kind of a turn happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sound of Freedom came out. I haven't seen that yet either, but Sound of Freedom came out. That got really great reviews, right?
Yep.
The Chosen has been a series that has gotten really great reviews. And then this movie, The Shift, that has just come out, has gotten really great reviews. Angel Studios seems to have tapped into something, production-wise anyways, that they're getting it right somehow. And I don't know if it's the...
Commercially.
Yeah. Nice.
Just for your benefit.
Thank you.
And maybe it has something to do with the tendency of different studios now to taint their movies with messaging of the woke variety.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's shifted. I think a lot of these Christian movies are now focusing on the messaging less and focusing on production more, and movie studios of Hollywood are focusing on the messaging more and the production value less. And you're seeing the results of that at the box office, I think.
So what you're saying is it's not as entertaining because of the message?
I think that if you want to go to church, you go to church, not a movie. And you go to a movie because you want to be entertained. That's the reason you go to a movie. No other reason. And I think when you try to make a movie a message, you defeat the purpose of the movie in the first place, and you inadvertently take that responsibility from the church where it belongs. That's my opinion.
Okay.
But that being said, I haven't seen The Shift, so I don't know if it's guilty of that or not. I don't
think the Shift is guilty of anything but being a good sci-fi movie.
Oh, no, that's not true.
Here we go. Well, when I say guilty, I mean that not that it was bad, but it's guilty of nothing more than just being a good sci-fi movie. Because as I got into it, and I recognize scripture that they put up on the screen, but they didn't label it until I guess about the middle of the show, or maybe even towards the end. They labeled something with Job. Prior to that, it was if you're not a Christian and you walked into that not expecting anything, you'd walk away with, that was a good sci-fi movie.
I'm not
a whole lot more.
I agree with you that yes, it was. If you would have taken the Christian elements they tried to shoehorn into it, if you'd have taken that out, it would have been a stellar sci-fi movie. But the problem is the people who are making this aren't casual Christians. So if you're not a casual Christian, you cannot try to shoehorn Christian ideals in a movie and then just be like, oh, okay, it didn't really work. Like Pastor Chris was saying, like the challenge, I mean, you really summed up what my whole point's going to be, so I kind of feel like I'm deflated here now, but you cannot, Christian truth does not belong in a genre of fiction.
Agreed.
Because now you're really muddying the waters. And that's why I'm not a big fan of Angel Studios. They are doing nothing but muddying the waters of what actual Christian truth is, and that's what they're guilty of. And if all these people claim to be Christians and claim to be trying to put out the message, then all they're doing is creating confusion. I mean, you look at Chosen, we're taking artistic license with what happened with Jesus and the disciples. To me, that's just dangerous waters. You take Sound of Freedom, they totally gloss over the fact that the main character in that is Latter-day Saint, which is not compatible with Christianity at all. And then you take this movie, and the genre of this movie, it might as well have been a Santa Claus movie. When you watch a Santa Claus movie, what do they do?
That's what I was thinking coming in.
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's a Santa Claus movie. Like, hey, just by virtue of believing, that's your salvation.
Yeah.
And this movie does the same thing. Like Pastor Ken mentioned it before I did in our conversation. Like, they never mentioned the name of Jesus one time. Like
one time it was written.
But are they required to?
I would say they're required to if they're going to have a tomb with a necklace that says he lives. And they're the ones putting it out like it's a modern day retelling of Job. They're the ones saying it's a Christian movie. You know, I'm not putting that on The Shift. The Shift is openly advertising themselves as a Christian movie, and as a modern retelling of Job.
I've seen the necklace. I have watched the previews that have come out. I don't know that if I were a non-believer, and I wasn't paying attention to like Christian circles, I don't know that I would have gotten the fact that it was a retelling of the story of Job from just the theatrical release previews.
No.
I agree, but I'm pretty sure that when you look at the description, it says a modern retelling of the book of Job. Like, that's how it's been described in the official version. So, I mean, they're the ones making that connection, not...
Is that the way Angel Studios is describing it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know that that's totally a bad thing, but
part of my problem with it was choppy. They would go from current day to the past, and it was very difficult, as with most movies that are like that. Those breaks, those skipping from one time zone to another, was very difficult to pick up on. The old movie theater, where he would come in and look at the stuff from the back. I can't find that in my mind. What's that all about? Did not get that.
In terms of,
I think that what you're experiencing is just exactly what happens when you have a movie about parallel universes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's always going to be the case when you have a movie about parallel universes or parallel timelines. There's going to be this jumping back and forth that's going to happen. That's always going to be confusing. It's a very difficult genre of sci-fi to accomplish, no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only ones that I know of that have ever really accomplished that to any degree of success that is even marginally entertaining is Back to the Future.
What about The Matrix?
The Matrix, but that's not a parallel universe more
really.
in as much as
Not
it
in the same
is
way.
in as much as it is a virtual universe. So, but there were still only two universes that you were kind of dealing with. It's not like you had all these layers of universes kind of all piled on top of each other, and you don't really know where you are at any one given time. You know, I mean, it's like if you were,
Although
it was very obvious one way or another.
A good book will do that. You know, it'll cut back and forth between multiple locations and times and experiences, and you kind of see the tapestry all coming together as the plot lines all merge at the end.
But you have more time to think about it.
I do agree at the
and to
beginning when it
digest
first
that.
starts shifting.
Yeah.
It's not that apparent.
So
and
where does the
obvious.
empty tomb necklace come into this? I'm reading the synopsis for it on Angel Studios, and this is how they describe it. When the benefactor shifts Kevin into another universe, he struggles to find the wife and journey back to her, learn more about this new exciting thriller. That's all it says on Angel Studios.
That's about all it is.
Yeah.
That's one thing about Angel Studios is they are not overtly Christian.
It doesn't strike me as so.
I put a link here in the script about Angel Studios' mission statement. If you read that, they are not trying to be overtly Christian.
And I don't get that from the director of The Chosen either. He doesn't. He doesn't really. Anyways, back to my original question. What is the whole deal with the open tomb necklace? Anyways,
in terms of
the movie,
in the movie,
Yeah,
it's just a simple. So, my opinion is that they are trying to make him out in a way to be like Job, in terms of Job being very righteous, and so he meets the wife. And again, like
In a bar.
Pastor Greg said, there's not a lot of excellent character development. They really accelerated, I think, a little too much, but meets her and it goes into like a Rocky training montage, and there's just random snapshots and them going to church, him appearing to be a reluctant member going to church. Then apparently they lose a child that they have together, although there's happiness. And after they lose the child, he is trying to give her this necklace, which I assume, just based off the setting, as a symbol of hope. Hey, don't lose hope in our son being lost, because Jesus rose again. Here's the ultimate hope. It's kind of like the message I got from it, and that's kind of, it will play out later. Are we doing spoilers? Do I need to keep myself from talking about the movie?
I think we can avoid it.
I don't think we can avoid it.
Okay,
and
I just wanna make sure.
I don't really care. So you should know that if you don't want to spoil this movie for you, then you should probably not listen to the rest of this podcast.
So then later in the movie, it becomes a point of when he's watching this thing, because again, he goes and sits in this chair and he can watch all these other multiverses, and he's able to find his Molly because she's wearing the necklace that she refused to wear the day he gave her. So that's how he knew. That's how he found her in the multiverse, was through that necklace that she rejected after their son had died. But then she started wearing it, so he knew that was her.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as symbols go, I don't think it's bad.
No,
I think it's a
cool
great
symbol.
symbology.
Yeah.
I like it even much more than I do the cross, to be honest with you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But again, I guess my frustration is, I guess I can't remove myself. If we're going to present a Christian message, like let's present it.
Let's make it over.
Like let's not.
Yeah, but I don't agree with that. If you're producing art for the purpose of making a movie, and the purpose is to be entertaining, then you don't have to create this messaging that it has to be about the gospel, because it doesn't necessarily have to be about the gospel if it's just for entertainment purposes. And then if that's and if your argument is that, well, Christians shouldn't be doing anything where they're not involving the gospel, then we really shouldn't be making movies at all.
No, that's not my argument. My argument is if you're going to use the gospel as the centerpiece, which that is, you need to not present a movie that implies a works-based salvation and not a Jesus-based salvation.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that the goal of Angel Studios was to produce a gospel-centered message. I think their goal was to create a clean sci-fi movie that you could take your family to go watch. I think that was probably their goal.
Pure entertainment?
And pure entertainment. And I think in a world where we are frustrated because you can't turn on the television without seeing a homosexual couple, I'm not sure that that's a terrible thing to look for. If Christians shouldn't be making their own stories, and their own adventures and their own mythologies based on fictional archetypes, I'm not sure that that's a terrible thing. Can you draw allegory from it? Sure. Can you draw an allegory of Job from this story? Maybe.
No.
What I saw in the previews, you would really have to work hard to get the story of Job out of this.
You would have to know the story of Job to get that out of there.
It's interesting because the first parallel I got was with the temptation of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because he has Satan exactly in his face, tempting him with everything that he could possibly want.
Well, the
and him
preview,
turning it down.
The preview that you sent to us was him praying, and then the character playing the Satan figure, who is not Satan, he's something else. I forget what he's called. The curator,
benefactor is his
benefactor
name, but
it's Satan.
He is the personification.
But he was telling him, it's like, I will always be there to tempt you. I will always be there to try you. I will always be there. It's like, and he was very. I thought he did an excellent job in that role. He was terrifying in that role. Just the previews that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But to get back to your point, it's like, if every movie that we make must be gospel centered, then we only make one movie.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I agree with you. If their goal was just to make a wholesome, entertaining sci-fi movie, they could have putting the Christian thing wasn't necessary. Like, they could have left all of that out.
But then they would have been competing with every other non-religious
No, I don't
sci-fi movie.
I don't think it added. I don't think them putting the tomb in there and all that added any value, any entertainment value. All it did was confuse, because what it did was, you're saying, here's this guy who's a representation either of Jesus' trials or just a Christian guy. I mean, they are going for that. But yet what they present is not a man who's saved by grace through Christ. They're the one who chose to insert this. And so what they leave you walking away with...
How do we know he's not saved by grace?
Because
it's not apparent in the movie.
It's not obvious,
Well,
but that doesn't mean we can assume.
But
he's
think
not.
about the final. Think about the final act where he's at the pinnacle, where he's got to make the choice. Right? He's got to. It's, to me, it screams. And I will admit, when I finished it, I agree with it. It wasn't like you walk away saying like, "Oh, it's obvious works based," but at the pinnacle, right? He either has to make the choice to save the girl,
Tina,
or
Molly
makes the choice and he chooses Molly, right? And then he's with Satan.
Ooh,
right? That's what it is. So
close your ears.
If you are grace based, like, no choice you ever make can ever take you away from God. That's one. And for me, and it wasn't like when the movie ended that I was like, oh, this was then they had a special message, right? And I'll go ahead and jump into my. So I see the special message, and me personally, I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna salvage this whole thing. We're gonna salvage this whole thing, and we're just gonna say, hey, look, what we were trying to do was
sell more
present
tickets.
the testimony of God, Jesus. This is what the necklace is about. This is what we want you to know, that Jesus is the way. Like, I thought that was what they were going to do. And if they'd have done that, I would have had a 100% different opinion on the motive of the movie. But what did they do? They tried to sell more tickets, and they reinforced the fact that, and you preached about this, they reinforced the fact of what? Just go do good. And you do good by buying more tickets. So just go do good.
Pay it forward.
We just learned that you can't. Good
I don't
only
think they were
comes
trying
through
to
Christ.
do that. I think they were just crowdsourcing. That's their whole model is crowdsourcing.
Right. Well,
Yeah, they're not. It's not a studio that is got its production based in Hollywood, where you have Hollywood executives producing the movie. All of their movies are entirely crowdsourced. So Sound of Freedom, this was the reason that Sound of Freedom was such a big deal, because it outperformed a lot of the movies that were in the box office at the time, and it was absolutely, completely crowdsourced, as opposed to being produced by some type of an executive. So that I hear what you're saying, but unfortunately, go out and buy a ticket is their business model. That's how they survive. The box office, the Hollywood elites, they don't do that because they don't care if you go out and buy a ticket or not. They could care less because they already got their money.
Yeah, then say that. Then say, hey, we did this, we put this imagery because we want to get the message of Jesus Christ, and oh, by the way, we're crowdsourced. We'd love for you to, but instead they end the message of the movie with
buy more tickets.
Salvation is doing good. And we never define what doing good. You walk away from there thinking that
I didn't hear any of that. So
well, you didn't hear the special message.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of that. I've only heard what I've heard from Angel Studios outside of the theater. So I can't speak to that. If they said that, then yeah, obviously that's wrong. But based on their mission statement and the people who comprise the corporation, I'm not surprised.
No, I'm not surprised either. My frustration as a pastor is you take gospel truth and you intermix it in a known, and that's the other part. Like, how can we put the gospel truth in a movie with a multiverse?
Well, it doesn't sound like it's the gospel truth. It
has a tombstone where he lives. It's
Big
obviously,
deal.
Well, that's what they're implying, and they have on their website. It says, "Hey, buy the empty tomb necklace. Support the film with the empty tomb necklace, symbolizing the triumph of Jesus Christ." I mean, they're obviously trying in some way to put the gospel message, but they're mixing it with known error.
And so do Catholics.
Okay.
So do
Well,
Mormons.
I don't champion either of those groups.
And I don't.
What if
And
you
I'm not a
looked at-
proponent of championing Angel Studios as a group. I mean, obviously they have issues, but that doesn't mean that everything they produce is just garbage just because there's people on their board that are Mormon. I mean,
No one has said that.
Does it have artistic value, even though it doesn't represent the gospel of Christ? And then if our messaging is because it does represent a false kind of gospel, then we definitely need to be preaching against it, and also preaching against anything else that offers a false salvation.
Mm-hmm. Is that not why we're here today? Trying to discuss what should we promote this or should we not? Sunday night at the theater. Sunday night is a good night to go to see a movie, right?
Sunday night?
Yes, no? Yeah.
Well, it depends on if you have church on Sunday night.
It depends on your life. Yeah. I mean, everybody has different.
Here's a theater that
schedules.
probably holds 300 people, and there were 8 of us in there. I sat through it.
Well, that's typical
like,
for Haitian cinema. Yeah.
Perhaps. And then there was a young couple that walked out, and I just turned around and I said, "So what'd you guys think?" And the guy's immediate response was, "I liked it." 20-something. His wife goes, "Yeah, it was pretty good." And I asked them, I said, "Are you guys believers?" And they went, "Yeah." And I says, "Did you think the message was good?" And they both had a blank stare, like, "What message?" So my question was, what's the purpose of the movie? Is it entertainment? If you brought a non-believing friend into that theater, set them down, they're in my opinion, there is no way they're going to get a gospel message out of that movie.
I think they would have. It gives them the opportunity to ask the right questions.
Bingo.
And that's kind of where I went with
what
it.
they would have to do. They'd have
It's
to
an
ask the right
opportunity for
questions.
discussions and discipleship outside of the theater that gives you the themes to build on. Why would you have hope in a multiverse? I mean, you almost couldn't make that movie unless there was the hope of Christ in it, because a multiverse is totally pointless. There's no hope. It's a totally nihilistic ending to it, no matter how you look at it. There has to be some exterior force in a multiverse plot in order to create any kind of tension and
That is true.
and escape.
Here's
How
the
do you
thing,
escape from the multiverse?
There has to be something that's outside of the multiverse in order to provide some type of stabilized either
Resolution.
threat or heroic resolution.
So the non-Christian, unbeliever, maybe even antagonist towards Christianity, are they even going to walk in the doors to see that movie? Probably not. You know, Angel Studios.
I don't know, man. A lot of the reviews that I saw, that I looked at, were guys who were not believers. They were secular YouTubers that reviewed the movie, and to a person, they said it's pretty good.
Right. Okay. But the opportunity, if they went by themselves or a group of unbelievers, to present those questions that you're talking about, Ken, it's not there.
Well, I can tell you this: none of them.
they wouldn't do
none
it
of
with
them.
their friends.
Yeah, none of them were saying anything about it spiritually.
Right.
You know, none of them are saying, "Wow, this movie really made me think about my spiritual condition."
So what
You know,
would
none of them were saying
I don't
that.
think they're target.
Yeah,
That's where I'm coming from. So
I don't think their target audience would be the diehard atheist.
No, target audience.
Their
is
target
me.
audience is the people on the fence
Yeah. Well,
who don't want to go just hear a gospel story for the 10
But
billionth
it's not-
time, but they
Wow.
want some entertainment. And then
Well,
there
I
are
guess
these
that's-
themes and principles
I guess
that
that's
cause them to think.
that's the right question, though, right? What is their target audience?
mm-hmm.
Because if their target audience is believers already, then a gospel message is relevant.
Bingo. So it's a good sci-fi movie.
It's just
With
the
undertones of
messaging should be discipleship.
gospel.
That reinforces the believer's value system.
If your target audience is the world, then yes, the gospel is the most essential component.
But if they are trying to reach a target with the gospel, what you walk away from that movie is it reinforces the false belief that just do good.
But that's
if
what
I
I'm.
just do good.
How do you get that? Because
Where in
all
the
of
movie
their-
does Kevin do
it was all
anything?
focused on the empty tomb.
No, the only focus on the empty tomb is a symbol. The whole focus was on Kevin making good choices and doing good things. This is the entire thrust, the entire plot of the movie is Kevin enduring, Kevin not choosing Molly, Kevin not being the only one guy in the multiverse who refuses the benefactor. There's not a single thing in there that says
Which points to Christ.
grace that does not point to Christ.
What was the
is-
source of his decisions, though? What did he base his decisions on?
It doesn't go into that kind of depth.
So he just makes an arbitrary decision without any kind of
he starts
external forces.
He starts to pray to the Father, and then the benefactor leaves. And then there's no, and I guess again my point is they brought in the empty tomb necklace.
Mhm.
They brought that in. So if you're going to bring in the empty tomb necklace, it has, in my opinion, it has to be accomplished with that we are saved by grace. But because there's no discussion, you kind of walk away with, okay, Kevin's salvation was ultimately not the fact that he believed and trusted in Christ. That there's plenty of people that wear Christian crosses.
The message
that
I
aren't-
got was he was saved way before that.
but see,
you're assuming that. There's it's never said.
The reason that you're assuming that is because of the way that you have been discipled and indoctrinated, and the reason that they did the movie the way that they did was because they are an ecumenical organization with Mormons and Christians and Catholics, and the guy who played Satan, he's a staunch Catholic. So you have all these different denominational beliefs and Christian beliefs, and even some beliefs that I would consider to be cult-like, all kind of organizing around this kind of central idea. So when you create a movie that has to have a spiritual focus and all of them agree that Jesus must be kind of the center of it in some way, shape, or form, you're never going to come to a congruence where they're all going to be, you must be saved by works or by grace, because that's not going to happen. With a Catholic in the room, that's never going to happen. With a Mormon in the room, that's never going to happen. So if you walked out of it with one thing, and then you walked out of it with another thing, and then you walked out of it with a different thing, I think they accomplished their goal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They created a movie that made you think spiritually, but did not indoctrinate you into any one given area that you were not already indoctrinated in. Because it appears to me, from what I'm hearing, you being an apologist, you're going to approach the movie from where did they flaw in the presentation of the gospel message because they used the iconography. Obviously, that's the way you're going to approach it. Ken is going to approach it from how did it get me to the point and what was the source material to get me to that point. And Greg is just going to be like, well, it was a good movie, right? But being of his generation, a multi-dimensional parallel universe movie that jumps around a lot, he's going to be like, nah, this is ridiculous. So, I mean, you can see the demographic that they're going for just represented even in this room.
Right.
And the fact that it can convey different messages to different people based on your current level of indoctrination or your own denominational beliefs kind of tells you a lot about what their focus was.
Yeah, that's some excellent observations. Why aren't you wanting to see it?
Well, he already explained that.
Well,
it's not.
It's not necessarily because I'm against the movie. It's just that I for one thing, I'm not really crazy about paying money at the movie theater to go see a movie that I might be marginally impressed with.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not excited to go see it, I won't pay money to go to a theater and see it. So it hasn't done enough in the previews to make me go, oh, wow, I got to see that. Right? Mm-hmm. It just hasn't done it. They haven't done the job on that part. There's only a few things that actually do that well enough to make me like, oh, I got to go see that. Mm-hmm. Or it has to be a franchise that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And so, they just didn't do that. So, and that's kind of been the case with all of them. Like Sound of Freedom, even. It's a great story. It's got, I love Jim Caviezel, one of my favorite actors. And it's got a great storyline. I've seen the documentaries of The Real Thing. So to watch a movie that plays out the events, is not that interesting to me. And the previews just didn't. If there's one thing that Angel Studios is not getting right, it's the preview promo material. And part of what you're right about your argument is the reason they're targeting Christians is because it's an easy access. It's kind of like when country artists produce Christian albums. You're guaranteed to get all the Christian people to buy it.
Right.
It's like an easy demographic.
Yeah.
So then, kind of to your point, now that you've kind of laid that out, if you believe that Christians can produce art of value that's worth supporting, then why wouldn't you support it just to promote Christian art?
Because I don't support art just because it's some person. I support art because it's quality and it makes me interested.
But can I answer that?
That's just meritocracy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to support you just because you're a believer. I've known plenty of believers that create stuff that's just, they call it art or they call it music or they call it, whatever, and it's just not good.
I agree.
Yeah,
but I would also say the quality of art produced by Christians going back 20, 30 years was pretty dismal, but it's gotten to where it is because people have supported it nonetheless.
Can I respond? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think Chris pointed out to me how like you walk away from this movie, if you're a Catholic, if you're a Mormon, if you're Christian, right? You can walk away based on our biases going into the movie, not really going away with the gospel message. You're just that reaffirm what you already walked in with. So that for me is why I get frustrated with Angel Studios, why I can't support what they're doing, because again, I have an apologist bent, it's just creating confusion. It's not drawing the line. If you're going to claim Christian art, Christian whatever, my opinion is you're responsible to the King of Kings to lay the truth out.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, don't use that medium, because then otherwise you're spreading false truth.
Have you ever seen a quote-unquote Christian movie, or one that absolutely portrays the gospel to your satisfaction?
Nothing's perfect, but I think there's a difference.
Or an album, or a painting.
But I think The Passion of the Christ came about as close as any movie to me. Like, they obviously
but you probably
shoehorned
found
in some Catholic
fault with it. There
yeah,
were problems
no, for
with
sure.
It. Okay.
But there's a difference. Like guys say, there's a difference between a system of truth with errors and a system of errors with truth. And for me, that's the difference. In when someone's trying to portray the biblical message, say the Nativity, that movie, The Passion of Christ, that movie, like that is truth. It's just now there's some errors here and there because we're human. We're not going to get it perfect, right? It's not inspired.
Do you not think that's
movies.
what they did with The Chosen, though?
What with The Chosen?
Did they not try to portray a biblical story as best they can in an artistic way?
I haven't watched enough to know, but for me, the reason I say that about the Nativity and the Passion is because the source text, what they did was the Bible. The Chosen, by definition, they're on complete artistic license. They're 100% on just making it up.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Besides who Jesus is and who the disciples are, like those events, are they not going out and saying, "Hey,
that's true"? But with the Nativity, all the stuff that played out in the Nativity wasn't written in Scripture. That was a lot of that was our artistic license, along with the Passion. A lot of the stuff that happened in the Passion of the Christ was not clearly written out in Scripture either. So that argument begins to fall apart. I mean, with The Chosen, I think what they did is they took the excerpts of what is in Christ's life after he started his public ministry, and they have placed those in a timeline. And then when they don't have any access to scriptural identity for whatever's going on there, they fill it with artistic license because you have to tell a complete story.
Right,
so
but
I
agree,
think,
but there's a difference between a vast absence and a small. I mean,
I don't know, man. The Nativity is a pretty vast
Nativity.
absence.
No, I mean,
I think if you start getting very
from,
subjective there, because who draws the line? How do you draw that line? And if I believe that I'm portraying truth to the very best of my ability, can you come along and say, "Well, you're off on your rocker here"?
Well, this is why I'm not a producer of Christian art. Let's start there, right? So, who draws the line? I think the individual does, right? So for me, The Chosen is beyond what I will consume because I think it's too much license.
Okay,
but on the same turn, you would say that the Nativity is not.
No, it's still licensed, but to me, it's at least.
If you were to take everything out of that movie that was artistic license, that movie would be 10 minutes long.
Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to go
hear
back
about
in time.
this. Can you look at these movies as parable? Just like Jesus used parable, he just told stories, imaginary stories of lifelike people in real situations and glued them together with truths. Biblical truths to make a point that people can imagine themselves in and get behind.
Sometimes, yes, but sometimes, again, are we talking The Shift or The Chosen? Because The Chosen, I haven't watched. I'm not talking that because it's
I
not.
think
But The Shift, again, my issue with The Shift is that you walk away from that. All you're given is a symbol, no different from the cross, the symbol of the cross. And we know wearing a Christian cross does not save you, right? That's not what saves you. And the movie completely reinforces the whole time with Kevin. There's not a single scene where he calls on the name of Jesus, where he again, I think Chris pointed out, we would assume he's saved just because that's the way we were brought up. And that's what someone from our circle would do. But if you were a Latter-day Saint, like, you would have thought Kevin took their path to the empty tomb necklace, would you not? I mean, there'd be no difference in that movie. Right, there'd be no difference. So my frustration with the shift is it creates a culture of confusion, and it reinforces this belief that simply just doing good is the path to salvation. And they're the ones that chose to bring in the symbol of the tomb. They're the ones that chose to.
I think without the symbol of the tomb, I think you're absolutely right. Because then it would be just, you pray to Father, whoever you think that is, and he will guide you through whatever's ahead of you to eventual manifestation of your hope.
Right.
But because it's the empty tomb,
you have to now.
Then you have to. Then you know the object of all that hope and the power behind it all is the empty tomb.
Yes.
You might have to go on and ask, well, what does the empty tomb mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's where your friends and family fill in the pieces and help you make that step from the tomb to the person.
Yeah.
They showed the back of that at one point, and didn't it say on the back, he lives?
Yeah.
Stamped on the back of that. So the symbol itself is confusing to me. And
it didn't make sense.
Yeah,
it
didn't make sense.
Yeah, for sure.
It almost looked like an infinity circle at first.
Yeah,
I thought it was too simplistic. It's like, what kind of an icon is that? That doesn't mean anything. No. But then he lives. Oh, okay, I get it.
And again, I think it's a beautiful. I think it's
a brilliant piece of iconography.
Yeah.
Actually,
I think it's more beautiful than the cross because not more beautiful, but it's more applicable to us than the cross because that's what we are based off. Because the fact he lives, I guess. Again, my frustration as apologist is instead of clearly defining truth and clearly defining what he lives, why there's hope, you're left with, okay, our main character, and look how the movie ends. He doesn't even, so this was what I thought about later. I missed the whole connection with Jesus's temptations. Now that you said that, it does make sense that probably was, because I really keyed off on the Job verses.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I think about it, I'm like, man, that probably was closer. They're probably trying to mesh them, I assume, something like that.
It's kind of a Christ figure in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, as I went back through Job, and I'm trying to think, what was the point of the book of Job? Right? You have Job, who's this icon of righteousness, and he suffers. He can't understand. But throughout Job, Job is about a pursuit of God. Like Job wants his redeemer, he wants his defense, he wants salvation. Like he is pursuing God throughout the entire book, right? But in this movie, Kevin is completely infatuated with what?
His wife.
Yeah, not with God, but with his Molly. His salvation, if you watch that movie, is not on the necklace, not on God. It's on finding Molly in the multiverse, and that's where salvation is going to be found. I mean, that to me, when I step back, I'm like, okay.
That aspect of it is more humanistic.
Yeah.
I would say.
Complete. And then he doesn't even end up with her. Mm-hmm. He ends up with a different Molly from a different multiverse. Like, how do you square that circle?
It was like that was the best choice he had.
But he didn't have a choice. He got put there by...
Yeah. Was
that part that make no sense. That
was Molly a symbol of Christ that he was pursuing?
That's a pretty deep allegorical question.
Yeah.
I mean, the entirety of what you guys are talking about is completely and absolutely allegorical. To try and say that this is a biblical story is a reach at best. I've only found one article so far where Angel Studios even vaguely refers to this movie as an allegory of Job.
But they keep putting passages from Job during certain times, which is impossible, knowing the Bible and seeing what he's going through, to not read those verses that they put up in the movie during certain segments and not say, like, okay, this is they made the connection. They're the ones. I mean, I don't know that you could sit there and say we're not trying to make a tie to Job, but yet we specifically, strategically put in specific passages from Job during the movie.
When we started off, that's initially what I was saying. They had passages from Job, but they didn't label it.
You could say the same darn thing about C.S. Lewis.
Sure.
Totally.
What about C.S. Lewis?
Narnia is an absolute complete allegory of the sacrifice, death, and burial and resurrection of Jesus
Correct.
Christ.
But what did C.S. Lewis say about why he wrote Narnia?
It doesn't matter.
It does
That's
matter.
never said in the movie.
C.S. Lewis didn't make the movie. You
It's
can't blame
never-
him for the movie.
That's what I'm exactly. I don't even
No.
care. The point is that the
Nope.
movie doesn't declare that. So if that's an allegory of Christ, but it doesn't actually state that Christ is the way to salvation, it's in the same category.
No. First of all, C.S. Lewis says specifically, when he was questioned why he wrote Narnia, he said, to get a pagan to search for truth, you must make them first believe in the reality of good and evil. And he was very specific that he would not put Christ in those kind of stories to not muddy truth. He said simply, you have to have a pagan understand that there is a good, and in his mind, I'm not saying it's right, in his mind, once a pagan realizes that there's good and evil, that if he takes that and goes and seeks the ultimate good, he will ultimately find God. And that's why he didn't put Christ in any of the Narnia stuff, because he didn't want to take what was known truth and put it in what was a work of fiction. So that is my frustration with the shift is they inserted the passages from Job. They inserted he lives with a hope necklace. They insert this Christian stuff in a known false multiverse, and they reinforce it with this infatuation with Molly as salvation and this do good, which totally my frustration is that they're muddying the waters of truth.
Would you have liked it better if he prayed to Christ?
Yes, I
Instead
think
of the
that
Father?
would have given some clarity. But even then, when I think about it again, now that I think more about it, how do you square? Well, I guess because they weren't really presenting him as Job or Christ, so his righteousness really mattered. But the infatuation with Molly as the
I think
salvation
that's
for a
the
situation
wrong
was,
part of it there for the female audience.
I just don't. The dichotomy is the same, because they had a necklace, they had he is risen on the back or whatever it is on the back of the necklace. He lives. And they had the references to Job on there. Those are very specific. So is having a lion being sacrificed on an altar, dying and coming back to life. And in that situation, Aslan was never their salvation. He was only their inspiration. So in reality, the allegory is that if you're just inspired by the identity of Christ, you can have triumph. Is the conclusion that you can draw from that allegory. So you could make the same argument that you're making about that movie as well, or any movie that uses allegory as a sense. This is probably why Tolkien said, "Don't put allegory in my movies."
right.
Probably why, because it's too easy, because allegory is so subjective.
Yeah, and I think you need a lot of parameters to meet the tenets of allegory. I'd have to go study, because the guy who did Pilgrim's Progress, that's obvious an allegory. But I think you have to. I don't think everything fits into allegory. I think you have, we can try to make it into
C.S.
allegory.
Lewis was intentionally allegorical.
With Narnia, I'd have to go back and look, because I think because that's what Tolkien's whole argument, right?
Well,
Because
Tolkien,
you can take Tolkien's stuff and you can make it allegorical, but he wrote it not to be allegorical. So I don't know.
That's one of the big disagreements that him and Tolkien had when they were contemporaries, was that C.S. Lewis was intentionally allegorical and Tolkien didn't like that.
Right.
Yeah, that was one of their biggest disagreements.
But I guess for me, still, when you're going to, and I guess it's my apologies, Ben, if you're going to insert Christ, you've got to, because you know the audience, right? And I guess that's my thing. If I'm Angel Studios but we know they're trying to be ecumenical, so I guess this is a flawed argument from the beginning. But if you know you're presenting Christ to an audience that's mixed, you have got to define who Christ is. Otherwise, you just perpetuate confusion.
I don't know. I think that's our job.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it's the movie's job at all. I think it's our job to get on here and talk about that. I think it's our job to instruct the congregation on what is and is not flawed about that messaging. And I think it's probably too much of an ask to ask a studio to produce a movie of quality that is going to have the production value of these movies and have the messaging that we want as well. Because if that's the case, then people of the same doctrinal theology need to produce their own movies. And when we do that, the movies have very low production values.
But do you think that Angel Studios is gathering steam as going to be the pinnacle of Christian, quote unquote, production?
There's a possibility, yes.
Yeah, but we're sitting here arguing because they're not presenting actual biblical gospel truth. That's my frustration.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's ridiculous to think that they're going to present gospel truth. I don't think that that's something we should be even looking for.
I know we aren't, but I'm concerned about the people on the fence, the people who are just going to live a life and say, "Oh, this is Christianity. I just go out and do good things."
They're getting that message. They're getting that message every day on TV.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
watch Oprah.
I'm not sure that they're.
Don't watch Oprah.
I actually do see your argument, and I do agree with you in some ways. I think that that what they're doing is confusing people to a degree if they're approaching it from this concept that we're going to tell you about what Christianity is. Well, in reality, that you're not going to be able to do that with any one of these movies because the concept of Christianity is so complex. There's no way that you're going to get a group of Christians together to accumulate enough money to produce a valued product that are going to all agree on what Christianity is.
Right, but
So would you
that's
guys
not gonna
say
happen.
then? Let me just throw this in real quick. Would you say that the Kendricks are better at
Yes.
portraying gospel truth? But
Yes.
you would say
Their
they
messaging
produce
is way
lousy
better.
movies.
Yes.
Their messaging is way better. Their production value is terrible.
So if the Kendricks took over Angel Studios, we'd have a combination we could live with.
I think but see, that's the thing about that is that is solely messaging movies. And here's the problem with the Kendrick brothers, right? They have a very gospel-centric message, but you target church people. What's the point of that?
Right.
I think they did that because that's the only place they're going to get any money to,
Exactly.
to do the movies and make
Exactly.
new movies and grow
Yeah.
to the point where they
So-
can then begin more creativity.
In reality, they're the same as Angel Studios. They're just crowdsourcing. They just did it through a production company.
Yeah.
So
Well, the same in their logistics.
yeah, and so that's not. There's no difference in that. And most Christians aren't going to really care about whether or not this person was a good actor or not. Actually, think that most of their actors are subpar. But their messaging is brilliant. The
Yeah.
messaging in Courageous was brilliant.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The messaging in Fireproof was brilliant.
War Room?
I didn't really care for War Room all that much.
I knew that one would get
Yeah, yeah. I
Have
didn't
they
really.
made
Nerve there, Ken.
I like the idea of War Room. I
Yeah.
didn't like the way it was presented.
Yeah.
But in any case,
Have they made anything since War Room?
I don't think they've come out.
Didn't they
with
do
much
something with the
since
basketball team?
They did do something with the basketball
Yeah,
team.
there's one of those
I didn't see that one.
popular plotline
But see,
movies.
that's kind of like one of them things. It's like we made this movie with this amazing messaging, right? So you're just preaching to the choir, basically, is what
But-
you're doing.
The choir needs some preaching.
No,
once
they
in
don't.
A while.
They need to go-
some
I
entertainment,
love-
that's for
They
sure.
need to be involved with their church.
I love those movies. I mean, they inspire me. They keep me going.
That's great. Put that down. Go to your church, engage with your church family,
Come on, get on it,
and
Greg.
get that inspiration from them.
But where's the entertainment value outside of that? Is there any? Do you go to movies?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's my whole argument with Angel Studios, is that we have been asking these studios to produce entertainment in such a way that Christian families could go watch it and not have to be ashamed of going to the theaters
The
to watch
Kendrick
it.
brothers do that.
The Kendrick brothers do that. They just don't
Yeah.
do it well, in my opinion.
See, I
You-
would- I
but
would-
see, you're the king of B movies, though, right? Like, if I go to borrow a movie from you, I know that it's going to be a low production B movie. That's
Yeah.
That's what you like.
Yeah, it's what I like.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Because that's where my values lie. I don't want a movie that's, full of tons of violence and foul language and blood and guts. I do like those, by the way. But I can't watch them with my wife.
Yeah, my
But
Chuck
Historical, though,
Yeah.
less fictional, right?
Say that again?
Historical
Yeah.
stories, less fictional, just
Yeah.
gratuitous violence and blood and guts for its own sake.
Let's start off with Flywheel. I love that movie because it's a church in Georgia, I think, that said, hey, they got a guy that comes up and says, hey, I got this idea. I think God's leading me down this path to make a movie. Okay. And they made that, probably not even a B movie. That might be a C movie.
I enjoyed
But
Flywheel.
It was well done. The acting could have been better. Production certainly could have been better. Choreography.
I enjoyed
everything
Flywheel.
about it.
I enjoyed Courageous. I enjoyed Fireproof. I enjoyed all of those movies. Would I go back and watch them again? No.
See, I bought them.
Would you recommend them to a friend,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
an unbeliever?
But I think
Yeah.
Chris's point is that we are not going to be able to spread the gospel message and discipleship through art and entertainment. That's
No.
the church's job.
No.
And
No.
my thing though is if you're going to insert Christ into it, you had better do it truthfully and you have
Biblically.
at a minimum. It's different than like, hey, you're going to have a character who's you're going to make a movie like a big blockbuster and you're going to present a Christian character. Like, okay, you're not have an obligation, in my opinion, to be like, this is the gospel message, etc. But in this case, this movie to me meets the threshold of like, you're trying to present this as a Christian movie. Like it's using Bible verses. You should, I guess to me, to your point,
Why did they leave the references off of the verses then?
Yeah.
again, but who with a brain can't figure that out? I mean, honestly, that's not a good defense. I mean, we have
I
intelligent
think
people.
I'm just
watching
saying that's
this.
an intention to not make it look biblical, to turn off the marginal.
I think it goes back to their purpose. What is Angel Studios' purpose? And to listeners, I would say you need to understand that this is not Angel Studios is not a biblical Christian studio trying to promote God's truth. So do not go to these movies thinking you're. But I think there are some out there in the casual that could get that.
That's probably true, and I would say that shame on their pastor for allowing them to think that way. You need to be brought up in a place where you're going to receive doctrinal truth, and if you don't have that backing, then yeah, art can be truth for you. But if you have any kind of knowledge of what truth is, you understand that art is never truth. That's not a thing, and not in any case. I don't care if you're talking about Michelangelo or if you're talking about Mona Lisa, or if you're talking
you're telling
about
me God didn't sit on a cloud and touch.
No, art is never truth, and neither is a artist attempting to produce truth.
Right.
That's not their goal. That's never an artist's goal. I know that when I was going through art school, nobody in my art class was ever thinking to themselves, I'm going to paint some truth today.
Right.
That's not a thing. Artists paint feelings and emotions and commentary, and they try to elicit emotions and responses and thought. That's what art is. That's the whole purpose behind art. And I think if that is the goal that a roughly Christian organization, and I say roughly Christian because I think there probably are some Christians in that staff. If that is their goal, to produce art that makes people ask questions, they're probably going down the right path. Do they have a lot more to figure out? Yeah, probably, because they're in uncharted territories. I don't know of another studio that is a Christian studio that has made an effort to produce quality art to the scale that Angel Studios has done it. That being said, I agree with you. They're not a source of truth, nor should they ever be considered to be a source of truth. They're a movie that you go watch. And if it has any messaging, build that messaging around your own doctrinal beliefs and what you know to be true in the Bible, not what someone tells you to be true.
Okay, this might be a tangent. What do you think of Dry Bar Comedy then? Also produced by Angel Studios. Doesn't try to portray the gospel at all in any form whatsoever.
I've never even heard of Dry Bar Comedy.
There's some
Really?
funny comics in it for sure.
There's a lot of mediocre comics. There's a few bad comics.
Jeff
but
Allen.
that's true.
Jeff Allen's good.
That's true
Yeah,
all over.
he's
I
funny.
like
But again, I told you what my personal threshold is, which is if you are going to present Christ or gospel in a way, then you are obligated to present
To be on point.
that truth. That's my personal threshold, because that's the kind of bit I hold to myself. Of course, again, I'm a biased, right, with apologists. I'm very black and white, yada yada yada. But
And we appreciate that.
I don't think you need to make a justification for that, because that's necessary. But what I think, from coming from an artist's point of view, I think that if it has vague references to a spiritual concept, that's not them trying to present the gospel message. And I'm not sure that just saying he lives is presenting a gospel message, because it doesn't. Just him rising from the grave there's no point in that, unless you are talking about the sacrificial propitiatory sacrifice that he made before he rose from the grave, because then you're just talking about his victory over death. Okay, well that's great. What about his victory over sin, right? And so it doesn't tell a complete gospel message, even with just the symbol, which is the same thing you could say about the cross. The cross doesn't say that symbol either, or tell that story either. So, I think that from an artistic point, I think it probably does exactly what it was intended to do, in that we're all sitting in a room right now talking about it.
for sure. But what's do you have their mission statement by chance?
There's a link in
No?
the script if you want to open it.
Is it like
pull
4
it up.
pages long?
No,
I don't know.
It's less than a page.
I'm just curious. Are they striving to put out the message? Because on the front of their thing, they're like, "Hey, sell this.
You'll love
support
this.
Jesus."
You
I
haven't
will.
you haven't read there?
I haven't read it. No.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Is this going to start a whole nother hour? Should we save this for another podcast?
No, this is fine. Angels North Star is the name of the thing. I don't know what that is. Is that their organization?
Looking for Richard to jump out of his seat right there. Astrology.
Dear film fan, we are building a home for stories that amplify light. Just as a compass, the stars and magnetic north guided sailors through dark waters centuries ago, our North Star for filmmaking helps us navigate dark times and focus on light in our day. Darkness can seem pervasive. Last year introduced fires all over Australia, pandemic, economic turmoil, locusts infestations, rising food prices, protests and riots, earthquakes, and financial welfare. Sometimes it feels as if the tumultuous events are becoming more frequent. There's a reason the film business was one of the few industries that grew during the Great Depression. Hope is a fundamental human need, and in yesteryear, the filmmakers mastered storytelling to meet that need. Unfortunately, most shows offered these days add to the cynicism, division, and darkness so pervasive in society. I would agree with that 100%. The rise of the anti-hero is pervasive
Oh yeah.
in cinema today. I'll give you a perfect example.
Punisher.
Punisher's one, but I'll give you another perfect example. Godzilla.
He's a hero.
He is an anti-hero in all of the new movies. In fact, they utilize him to defeat the more evil monsters that are destroying the world. And so they guide him into the city to defeat those monsters. And in the process, he's destroying the city, killing millions of people, but they lift him up as this hero at the end.
a savior.
Right? A savior type. Where in original Godzilla,
Yeah.
he was the evil entity. He
Yeah.
was the enemy. And
Yeah.
that's what Godzilla, the new Korean movie that just came
The
out,
-1.
Godzilla -1, they went back to that. And they went back to that as a response to this anti-hero thing. right? They wanted people to understand that Godzilla was always an allegory for the devastation that Japan faced after the bomb in Hiroshima.
Huh.
He was always an allegory for that. So yeah, that, and plus, how many movies have you seen where the ending is despair and hopelessness? It seems to be a common thread in a lot of movies.
Yeah, I don't watch too many movies
in today's day and age. So yeah, they're right about that. There's not any real art being produced that is uplifting,
right,
for the most part.
But starting out, just if I can, maybe my frustration is they are confusion. The light. What is the light?
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean. They just this is all this relative.
They say it. It's hope. Hope is the light.
Hope in what?
They don't specify. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
If this was a secular, what we consider to be a secular organization, and they wrote this, we would think that it was just the hope of, love, or the hope of, prosperity, or whatever. But because they have a spiritual bent, we automatically think, oh, well, the light is obviously supposed to be Christ, and so therefore, if they're not producing Christ in the way that we want him to be produced, then they must be selling us some type of false gospel. I'm reading this. I don't get that at all. But let me finish reading it. Fortunately, darkness and light, hope and despair cannot exist in the same place at the same time. And we believe if we build a home for creators and communities to connect, specifically those who align with our North Star, Angel Studios will become known for fulfilling our universal human need for hope and light. Our time feels short. Choosing funding, creating, and spreading stories that matter has never felt more urgent. Whether as a customer, investor, or team member, thank you for joining us. And I think their whole point is creating stories that fill you with hope. And that hope may not be Christ. That hope may be just the hope of knowing that someone is out there rescuing kids from human trafficking. That's a story filled with hope. Has nothing to do with Jesus. It has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with the Bible. The guy who did that was a Mormon. Big deal. He had the guts to go overseas and rescue kids from human trafficking. That's a story filled with hope, regardless of your theology. It's our job to teach theology.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that, but their foundational show is The Chosen, which is, I just think it's confusing because you have a studio creating, first of all and foremost, an entire series on Christ. And then they have all these very generic allusions to the light and follow our North Star and stuff, language is purposely very politically correct and like, hey, we're not going to force you to choose between which Christ is the correct Christ.
You're not wrong.
That's just my frustration. Yeah. And again, that's why I don't make Christian art.
You're not wrong, but I kind of approach it a little bit differently. I'm not going to expect that a studio is going to match my theology.
And we know that, but we're pastors sitting here. My frustration is the casual person who just is going to consume this and think that
they're validated by watching it and agreeing with the value system.
Yeah, but you could say that about anything that they're watching. You know, the casual viewer that's going to watch The Matrix, they are going to be deceived into believing some type of Eastern philosophy. Or if they watch Star Wars, the same thing. They're going to be deceived into believing in some external force that makes up all things, right? Or if they watch Lord of the Rings, they're going to be deceived into thinking that there's some maybe deities out there that are elven in nature or whatever. You know, I mean, you could say that about any form of entertainment. I just think that it's not necessarily good for us if we throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. If we just say that, well, they should be dismissed because they don't fill in with our specific theological ideals, and so you shouldn't watch them at all. I think that not only would that be impractical, it would be impossible. You're not going to be able to regulate that. And what's the alternative? People are going to watch Star Wars or Marvel or Hallmark or, whatever. People are they're going to intake entertainment.
No, I think what I disagree with that in is that they could have very easily put a 2-minute segment, less than 2-minute segment of Kevin's moment of salvation.
But then it would have been
all the water.
Then it would have been a Baptist movie.
How would it? It would have been a biblical movie because that's how you're saved. By
It would have been a
15,
movie.
1 through 4.
It would have been a movie about messaging, and that's a completely different thing.
But they're already messaging. The whole point is messaging that we're producing stuff. The light is Christ. Light is not random hope.
If you're trying to put out a movie that represents hope that will encompass a large group of people in an inoffensive manner, you cannot include the gospel.
Then you need to take out the tombstone necklace. You need to take out all that stuff. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't insert these very specific Bible references, very specific references to Christ, and not qualify exactly the Christ you're talking about when you know the audience is looking at different Christ, and then sit back and say like, oh, we're just trying to make light. No, you either need to take that out because it would have taken nothing from the movie. Would you agree? Like it still would have been a good sci-fi movie. Well, I think you said because of the multiverse, you need a God outside of it to bring hope. Okay, that's a good point. But I don't know. I guess that to me is a frustrating. That crosses my threshold of like you have inserted too much references overtly, purposely, and you're not qualifying to an audience that you know looks at different Christ. You've got to define the Christ.
That's akin to saying that if you write a poem about the tomb, that you need to include an excerpt that gives the gospel with every time you present your poem. That's the same principle. Or like
look at the Kendrick brothers. They never fail to present the message with their movies. Every movie they present the message without fail.
and that messaging always reaches the same group of people.
But okay, so we're not doing the message. We're reaching more people, but we're reaching them with a message that's not valid. So
you're reaching the same people with the same message over and over again that they've already received at church every week.
Right, but you're saying if we take out the message, we're going to reach more people.
I'm not saying that you have to take out the message. I'm saying that you can make the message subtle, like what they're doing. That there's nothing wrong with that in as much as what they're trying to accomplish. They're just trying to accomplish the filling of people with hope, and hope in a general concept, not a specific concept. By that standard, if you were a person that wore a cross around your neck, you would need to have something with you that explained to everyone that saw it the exact parameters by which you wear that cross.
No, by engaging in conversation, you could do that.
They don't have the opportunity to engage in conversation.
Yes, they did. They had an entire movie with dialogue. Those are not the same. That's apples and oranges. They made a movie.
Perhaps
they made a movie.
The
where they
poem is not though.
That.
The poem is not. And if you produced a poem with a general hope concept, and you included in it the idea that he lives with the open tomb, you would not be able to produce that with that concept unless you also included with it an excerpt that clearly outlined the resurrection that you're talking about and the Christ that you're talking about.
That would apply to all Christian music then, pretty much.
Then all Christian music then would need also a statement at the end of their song that stated, we are talking about Jesus Christ, the resurrected Savior who died for our sins.
And that is the reality we live in, right? How many people...
Do you really want that at the end of all of your songs?
I'm not... Again, this is why I don't produce Christian art, because that would be my threshold. This is why I know I'm not a Christian artist, because I would feel that necessity to ensure that you understood exactly what I was defining. 100%. That's why I get frustrated when we have people listening to what's that big BYU choir? The Mormon Tabernacle? Yeah, the Mormon Tabernacle. Do all these Christian songs. I'm like, do we not understand what is happening here? This is not the same Christ we're singing about.
Are you indicating possibly that the shift has, I don't want to say satanic undertones along with Christian undertones as well? because we're not presenting the truth.
Well, let's
in a
define
clear
satanic undertones. I mean, if we're going to say satanic undertones is anything that doesn't lead to the gospel,
Yes.
then I would say yes. But most people, when they hear satanic undertones, would think of it a little bit more of an overt. But here,
one of the things I was looking at as went through the movie is when it was done, it was like, okay, if a non-Christian is coming in to watch a sci-fi movie and he sits through this, is he going to come away with a negative eye to Christianity, or is he going to come away with a positive eye to me, myself, and I, which is what Kevin was doing? He was focusing on himself initially.
yeah, I think that the word I'm looking for solidifies as secondary. But I really, Chris put it the best way, which really made for me, help me understand why I'm frustrated with the movie, which is, again, you go in there with a bias, be it Catholic, Baptist, LDS. And because of the general presentation of Christ, you're going to walk out of that not convicted to examine your Christ at all. True. Which, again, my frustration is whether or not they're claiming overt Christianity, to me is a non-argument, because they're put out as Christian arguments. They made the chosen. They're obviously trying to do the Christian message, but yet they are not having the integrity to say, this is the Christ. Even if they just on the website, look, we're selling these tombstone necklaces, but the Christ that we are talking about is this Christ. Because they know their audience is mixed. I mean, they can't sit here and say that.
Well, not only is their audience mixed, I would imagine that their board of directors is mixed.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah. So that I think that's for a company like this, that's a really, really, really big ask.
And another thing that their viewership, their Christian viewership, is varied. There's nine different ways to Christ according to Christianity.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you, my own personal opinion is I don't want them doing any messaging. I don't want a movie theater doing any messaging at all.
Agreed. That's
period.
Why, yeah.
Right. And so in that, I can agree with you that, if you want to make an allegorical kind of concept, whatever. Right. And if you want to make even, I don't even know that I'm really bent out of shape about the iconography, because if it makes you ask a question, that's great, whatever. Iconography is everywhere. Even biker gangs put crosses on their arms. So, whatever, that's not a big deal. What I don't want is I don't want a movie theater going in there presuming to teach any type of doctrine, particularly doctrines about soteriology, or particularly salvation. Leave that to me. That's my job, right? And when a movie theater or a movie production company dares to take on that endeavor, then yes, you need to be right. You need to be right 100%, or you need to be rejected, because then that's a false gospel. And then, that's one thing that I think that Angel Studios has done. There are a lot of things. They're ecumenical. They are teaching about Christ in an artistic fashion. I have not heard, I know there's some debate in The Chosen about whether or not they state that Jesus is God or not. I haven't gotten any kind of conflicts over that in it, watching it, but I haven't watched it that much. We watched the first couple of seasons. But I think that they're taking biblical stories, they're making art out of it. And I think it's our job to inform people that you can't go to a movie theater and receive your truth. That's not how it works. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, not by Angel Studios. Your truth comes from Scripture. Your truth comes from the preaching of Scripture, from the foolishness of preaching, and your church family. And that's it. It doesn't come from the Kendrick brothers. It doesn't come from anyone else. That's it. And I think that's the messaging that people need to understand, coming away from even this discussion is that if you're going to a movie theater with the anticipation of receiving some type of biblical truth, you need to reassess what you're doing with your church.
So you made me ponder a question. So we said earlier that art is not truth. So if you're an artist and you're a Christian, are you under no obligation from God when you make art? Like if you mix in gospel truth with art, does that now, because art is not truth, does God not care that you are blurring and confusing his truth?
There's a big difference between art in general and art that is directed as worship. If you are a Christian artist and your goal is to direct art that is worship, then yes, you are under an obligation for it to be biblical.
And worship would be something that directs you towards the light.
Worship is something that is demanded by God to state who he is.
Agreed, but worship's...
No, I don't think light is a specific enough word for worship.
Right.
Light could be anything. That could be a spaceship.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
In their statement and their mission statement, there's nothing specific in there enough to tell me that they are a specifically Christian organization trying to specifically teach Christian concepts. They have a biblical bent in that they take stories from the Bible and translate them into stories. But just because they do that, I don't think I would assume that they are teaching. But from your point of view, I could see where people would be like, oh yeah, they're obviously teaching about Christ, so therefore it must be right. So I can totally see where you're coming from. I just think that it's our job to tell people, guys, no, you're not going to get your truth from that. Well, and art, and for art's sake, which is what this is, and worship are two different things completely. Worship is demanded of God. Entertainment is not.
Right. Ken, you've done the most study on Angel Studios. Like, after this project, because I know when we did The Chosen, you kind of came to their rescue.
I defended them a bit.
Yes. So where are you with them now after this latest project?
I haven't really moved on it. I think they're producing better and better entertainment, but I see their mission as mostly entertainment to a segment of the population that wants to see those things. I wouldn't send anybody to one of their movies or send them to The Chosen to understand the life of Christ.
Right.
In truth and in fullness. Go to your church for that.
Agreed.
But if you are a family that believes in Christ and you want to have some family entertainment, if your family loves movies, you have the choice between seeing The Shift or one of the other Angel movies and seeing a Marvel comic, go to The Shift.
But I would qualify that with you need to, like any movie, right? You shouldn't, with kids, have a conversation after and address the fact that what's being presented
point out
isn't.
They said this, they did that, you saw this happened, this here.
Yeah.
How that fits into your theology.
Just like any entertainment.
And if it doesn't, you need to use that as a teaching moment.
I think the dangerous thing to do is to elevate Angel Studios into some type of theological agency. And even if they are, like, let's just say for the sake of argument, that they are trying to do that, it would still be a mistake to elevate them to the status of some theological agent, because that is not the pathway that God chose for that.
Yeah.
So that needs to be known. And I think that if you are a pastor and you are not teaching your people that truth comes from God's word only, and people are being deceived into thinking that what Angel Studios is producing is some kind of like mandate on doctrine, you need to step up your game and teach your people proper doctrine.
Yeah,
but that
kind of reminds me of The Shack.
The Shack, boy, yeah. What an abysmal doctrinal movie.
Yes,
it was actually not even really a great movie. Period. But
the funny thing with that is, who was the author of that? The book.
I know one of the co-authors' names, but the main author, Dan.
I know when that first, because that movie came out back in '08, or the book came out 04, 07, some the
Early.
aughts. And I remember all the debates and how similar pastors come out and say, hey, this is not doctrinal, this is not Christian. People's like, oh, you're just haters, and they'd interview the guy, and I'm totally Christian, blah, blah, blah. And then think now he's producing books about the allegory of Adam and Eve and how that's just false.
Yeah. Or you remember when the Da Vinci Code came out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was another one.
Yeah, that was another one where Christians were just like, and I think to me that falls to a lack of discipleship.
Yeah.
What about Left Behind?
That's another one.
I've read some of the books. I never watched the movie with Kirk Cameron, but yeah,
The books are better.
it's funny because
The books are way better.
Yeah.
It was another one that kind of like what I was talking
Yeah.
about. It's like a lot of these Christian movies end up being based around end times prophecy because for some reason Christians are just obsessed with end times prophecy. We can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And so, but they all end up being like really terrible acting, terrible special effects. It's like watching some kind of high school production and having to like sit through it and go, wow, that's really good. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
And that's that support that you give them in spite of the amateur nature of it. It's like, no, if you're going to produce something and it's going to be deemed as being professional, if it's not professional, then, I'm going to say that. Will I like it? Maybe. The one reason that I do like the Kendrick Brother movies is because they have great messaging.
Right.
It's hard to deny that. They do have good messaging.
Kirk Cameron's done a couple good, I guess you'd call them documentaries. The one he did with the Liberty Statue.
Cameron does great documentaries.
Liberty Statue and the Christmas one, Saving
Yeah.
Christmas. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed that
If
one.
I'm honest, Christians should just stick with doing documentaries.
Yeah.
Really, because we would be much better at that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to foray into the world of art and cinema, then I think
It's a tall order.
it's a really big order to do in today's society. One thing that I will say about Angel Studios, though, that I do appreciate is they're teaching Hollywood that you are not as big as you think you are.
Yes.
That's one thing that they are doing, which I can totally get behind.
Right.
Is that they are showing that, hey, the power is in the people. It's kind of one thing about Disney that's really frustrating is they just keep producing this garbage and they just keep doing it because they can, because they got the deep pockets and they don't care about ticket sales. Obviously, they don't care about ticket sales or any of that. They're just going to follow through with this kind of agenda that they have.
They're committed. You talk about
Exactly.
someone committed to the message.
Exactly. And that's one thing that Angel Studios is doing is telling Disney, hey, look, we can perform as good as you guys are doing and we're completely crowdsourced. So what's up?
Right.
And so, I can totally get behind that. And you know what? It would take the organization of a Mormon to do that because anybody who's outside of the LDS, try to get 5 Baptist churches in line to financially commit to anything. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. Right. So
SBC?
Nah. They can't even agree.
IMB?
They can't even agree on what's good for the North American Mission Board to do.
Right.
Or what resolutions to put through, or if you should have resolutions. They can't even decide that. So, So, obviously.
There's a bright side. What if the Catholic Church ruled Angel Studios? Imagine what would be put out.
Well, did you see what the Pope just made headlines for today?
Oh, yeah. Well, wasn't it not too long ago he had some
There's several
transgender people
headlines
dancing
about
around
them.
him or something? Or, I don't know.
He's authorized the blessings of same-sex
Really?
unions as long as they're not technically marriages.
Yeah.
Okay.
The seed of compromise. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like you said, there's truth to what you said. I just got to figure out how to formulate the argument around it. But when we gave away marriage to the state, that's where we really screwed up.
Yeah.
And, because like you're saying, it's why am I fighting for institution that's not biblical? Because we gave the authority to the state and we took it.
We took it from God and gave it to the state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would we fight for something that is empowered by a judge?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I just have kind of weird ways of thinking about things at times.
But it's very accurate. I mean, you preached about it one time. I heard it that's always stuck with me is very insightful, and it's something that we just don't think about. We all assume that when two non-believers go before a judge, that makes it a marriage before God. Does it?
Does it really?
Does it?
Why?
Yeah.
Why does it? Because it has the word marriage attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know. I'll you guys have Richard, do you want to start? Do you have any last words?
Yeah. I just, man, we covered so much ground.
Yeah.
I think the important point for me is, one, I think we could all admit that we probably consume a little too much entertainment in our lives.
That's probably true.
And that we should probably all seek more education. And when it comes to biblical education, I think Chris hit the nail on the head, is we need to find biblical education in the church. And that should be our first priority. And so if we're not prioritizing getting biblical education in the church, then it really doesn't matter what else we're doing in our life, because we don't have our priorities straight. And I think I have to concede again to Pastor Ken in the sense that looking at Angel Studios in a different light, I know I'm going to tend to be too harsh, and that's probably for my own apologetic bent and wanting to put...
Wait, let me step in real quick. I don't think you need to concede anything, actually, because I think there is an innate value in a person that is willing to take the harder line. So I honestly don't think you need to concede anything. I think that that you can reach a consensus based on what you've heard. And everybody's mind can be changed, but I don't think that you were off base, wrong. You don't have anything to concede as far as I'm concerned.
I guess I just meant that
just maybe a broader perspective.
I see your perspective on Angel Studios a little bit more. I still don't think they're Christian, but I'm not saying that by any means, but I'm saying I can empathize with your respect for Angel Studios a little bit more.
Okay.
And that's what I'm going to work to see. And Pastor Greg, again, you taught me to watch better movies and stop watching John Wick every chance I get.
Yeah. You should ask to borrow Extreme Days.
No.
Extreme Days is very insightful. It will change your life.
Yeah.
What kind of extreme were you talking about? Like,
do you remember Peter Pan with Robin Williams?
Yes.
You remember the guy who played Rufio?
Rufio. Was that one of the Lost Boys, or was that
he was the main Lost Boy,
the head guy?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Anyways, he's the star of that, and they're extreme sports people.
It's
like skating and
like a high school
bicycle
group got together and said, "Let's make a movie."
Yeah,
like Dumb and Dumber.
It really, truly is like
yeah. It's not even as good as Dumb and Dumber.
Okay,
but it's fun.
I like if you took Saved by the Bell and gave them extreme sports.
Oh man!
So if you love fail videos, that's your.
And I don't think any of the actors in there could do any of those extreme sports.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we started this podcast with the shift, and we shifted several times to alternate universes as we were going through. Here's my take. As I sat through it, I won't say that I had a feeling of doom or anything like that, but it was like, this is not a movie that had any redeeming value for me in it. And as we walked out, and it was like Adriana, I think she said something to the effect of, well, it was a good sci-fi movie, but I hate sci-fi movies. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Here's what else she said. We had some very nice people give us a gift card. So we got to go to the show. We got to get our popcorn and water, and didn't cost us anything.
You didn't have to
Nice.
spend any money on
Didn't
it.
have to spend any money.
That's the way to go to the theaters.
Yes.
Yeah. To go see something like that for sure.
Yeah. So I would leave it up to the listener. If you want to go see it just because of what you've heard us talk about today, go. Don't go with any preconceived notions or ideas that this movie is going to change your life, or that this movie is, leaning left or right or up or down.
Is it fair to say though that if you leave when you leave the movie, you're not going to have a sense of despair?
Yeah. I mean, my whole psyche is not
I
that
don't agree
way.
with that.
Yeah, but I could
does-
see that you could come out.
If he would have ended up with the right Molly, maybe. But the whole movie is set in a dystopian universe, and at
I
least for
think
me,
it's too
you
far
watch
of a
the 2
reach.
hours of dystopian.
It's too
you just, like,
unrealistic.
Yeah.
it's emotional.
That's a whole nother
yeah.
conversation. Maybe they have missed the mark on their mission statement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the all the different realities for Molly was to me
Positive.
confusing.
Yeah, they were all positive, and like he
Yeah.
was a gangster and a thug,
Yeah.
a bank robber.
You screwed up when you lost this one. So I would say if you want to go see it, go see it. Don't go with any preconceived ideas. Just enjoy it for what it was, a movie, entertainment.
An averagely made sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I would say it's I would go above average.
Yeah, without the Christian innuendos for me, it would have been a B plus.
A B
Yeah.
plus
Yeah.
sci-fi
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good.
I love Samwise Gamgee in the movie. Oh man,
Yes,
he was great.
and
Sean Astin
we
was
won't-
always good.
we won't throw that spoiler in there. You guys can figure that one out on your
Oh, he
own.
was great.
Yes, enjoy that. Enjoy Sean's.
The benefactor was phenomenal too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, he's
he's a
such
good
an
actor.
intense dude.
The
Yeah.
the
He's a
good
previews that I
actor.
saw of his acting in that were phenomenal.
Mhm.
So
He's done a couple
Yeah.
interviews where he kind of unpacks all that, what it was like for him to get into the character and play that part, because he didn't want it in
really,
the beginning. Yeah.
like he didn't want it because of.
They asked the
The evil
director or
behind
the
it.
executive producers came and we got a movie for you. And he was all excited because he hadn't been working. He's kind of been blacklisted in Hollywood because he declared he would
Yeah.
not kiss a woman who's not his wife on film.
Nice.
And so he's been blacklisted for several years. And then they came to him with this part. And he said, well, okay, what's it about? We want you to play Satan. And he's like, immediately, no.
That would be a challenge, right?
Yeah, so
It's like the actors that play Hitler. I always wonder, like,
Yeah.
what that's got to be
typecast
like. I
that way.
don't.
They
that's
should have
gotta
a
be
black
tough.
guy play Hitler.
dude.
Well, let's see.
Play
They've got
the
Santa
racist
Claus.
card.
Hey, they had a black woman playing God, in the shack. So
You just reminded me. And
Everything's open.
if Leslie listened to this, she might be. She won't be upset. But the Holiday Inn. Have you ever seen this movie? It's a classic.
yeah.
Got Fred Astaire,
Irving
Bing
Berlin.
Crosby.
Yeah.
So everybody's telling us it's this classic Christmas classic. Got to watch it, right? And so we sit down as a family to watch it. 20, 30 minutes in, they have this huge blackface scene. And I'm just like, what in the is going on? Like, it was
was okay back
so. We wanted to burn the DVD. It was crazy. It's like so. I don't know.
It was
It's
okay.
it's
Yeah.
not.
It's a 50s movie.
You know,
we have
everybody
progressed a little bit.
everybody talks
Oh.
about the 50s as if it was this time filled with virtue and all that.
Oh, man, there was a whole dark
But
side
there
in
was
the
a
50s.
there was an undercurrent of sexuality and deviancy
Oh, yeah.
all throughout the 50s.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, come
mean,
on.
The movie is based off this inn that you go to, and it's just July 4th party, holiday. You know the debauchery that's going on there. I mean, it's not.
People are people, no
Yes.
matter what time you put them in.
Mm-hmm.
But it just shocked me that people saying this is a Christmas
Yeah.
classic, and then they show this long scene,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Da, 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 da.
Wow.
Wow.
and the way
this
they
is,
present is not. It is not. It's a very. Even then, had to be a very mean-spirited depiction. I'm just like, wow, I can't
Yeah.
believe this.
Yep.
Anyway,
You're too
Crazy.
sensitive.
So,
Sorry.
What are your
Totally
last
off track.
words?
that was
What are your
mine.
last
Sorry, I
words?
jumped back in. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
back to Ken.
Back to me or Greg?
Yeah, no, I.
Oh, that's right. Great.
I was done.
You done?
Ken, Ken,
Okay.
Ken. Sorry.
I appreciated the movie because I think it raises the bar for the Christian studios a little bit higher. I mean, all future movies, particularly sci-fi movies by Christian studios, will have a tough time matching up to it, and somebody will keep pushing the bar up. And I look forward to that, getting up to where it is on par with Hollywood, and they're fighting on the same level playing field, because I think it needs it. The plot, there were a few disappointing points in it. To me, I thought like you said, the character development and the romance between Kevin and Molly, I thought that went way too fast.
Right.
It just it was just too stereotypical.
Would have been a 3-hour movie.
Yeah. I think
As
it
soon as they fell
probably
in love, they
started
were
out
fighting
as
about
a
bills.
really good book or screenplay, and they tried to do it all in the movie that they cut and put out to the theaters. I think some of it could have been left out or improved in that area, but that's just being critical. And what was my other point? I had another point I wanted to bring up.
So you make me.
Oh, last point.
Richard's a blowhard.
If you
Was that
go
your other
see the
point?
movie, and if you like it or you don't like it, send us a comment at 3p@athelbaptistchurch.org. Explain what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, how it either did or did not synchronize with your theology and your worldview, so that we get a sense of you're a moviegoer in this kind of a worldview, and this movie moved you or did not move you in that.
Yeah, let us know what you think
Yeah.
of the movie.
Yeah.
That's
And do you want us to do more of these movie reviews?
yeah. Is that something you enjoy hearing?
Yeah.
Or just even conversations about the concept of movie
Yeah.
reviews.
Art.
Art in general.
As long as we don't have to watch Lady Ballers. Oh my goodness.
I think that's a hilarious concept for a movie.
I think it's a hilarious concept, but
I know it's going to be filthy because Daily Wire doesn't do any kind of like holding back when it comes to profanity or anything like that. They make purely secular movies. But the concept is hilarious.
for sure.
Yeah.
Would you say though, in your regards to your comments, sorry not breaking up, would you see the Daily Wire is kind of the same fight against Hollywood that Angel Studios is
Yeah,
making? Just
absolutely.
in a less,
100%.
I haven't seen enough of their stuff.
100%.
I think they're taking a very renegade approach to media in
Oh, yeah.
general. Just they're taking on the system with just
Well,
fist in your face.
Jeremy Boring would tell you.
Which one is that one?
He's the second owner of it. It's him and
Okay.
Ben Shapiro.
Okay.
Jeremy Boring would tell you that 100% the movie theater or the movie segment of that was created as a alternative to Hollywood, just like they created their own children's
Yeah.
movies as well.
Right. They're doing
So they
Snow
have a-
White, right?
Yeah, they have a whole children's thing too that they're doing in direct response. Snow White is a direct political response to Disney.
Ziegler and
Yep.
her whole.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they're purely political. That's their whole goal. You can't read their mission statement and be, confused.
Or watch anything of theirs or listen
Yeah.
to anything of theirs.
And I guess what
No,
I meant
you're-
by that
you're
is,
taking on the
are
fight.
you championing them like you're championing Angel Studios?
Not yet. I'm not a subscriber to them, so I don't have any exposure. I think.
I would say that if you do, I wouldn't promote it just because of the level of profanity in some of it. I have watched all of them except for Lady Ballers, and the one with Gina Guerrera in it, whatever her name. I think that's her name.
The West movie.
The
The
Western?
one, the fire, something on the prairie or whatever
yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Excellent movie. Lots of profanity.
Right.
The one with the girl run hide fight. It's about the school shooting.
I haven't seen that one.
Was really good. So, as an alternative, if you like those types of movies, as an alternative, you're certainly going to get a lot more conservative messaging
Probably an older, more mature
in those
audience.
in those, but they're definitely not for kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't even dream about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would champion either one of them. I think that they're all just studios producing art. That's the way they need to be looked at, and I don't want to defend any of them. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're producing art, and I think it's our job to dissect it and tell people what is right and what is wrong about it, just like we just did with Daily Wire. It's like their movies, yeah, they're okay. Lots of profanity,
I would say vote with your wallet.
Yeah. Yeah. And then use your own wisdom. You have to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And so, if you know you're watching something and you know it's displeasing in your relationship with God, in Christ, and it's grieving the Holy Spirit, you should probably just stop regardless of what it is.
Right.
So, there's that. But I still think Lady Ballers would be hilarious. I'm not going to watch it probably because it's probably really vulgar.
I mean, I listened to the Critical Drinker's take on it. So
this Critical Drinker, he's funny.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's pretty intelligent guy too. He's written a lot of books. And
he's got a great accent. Yeah. He's kind of the same. He's on the same page with Nerdrotic. Yeah.
I think he's a little bit more reasonable than Nerdrotic. I think Nerdrotic can be very biased, and I think
Jeremy from The Quartering used to be that way too. He used to be very much like Nerdrotic, but he softened a little bit over time to be a little bit more reasonable in his approaches. Nerdrotic is very unreasonable a lot of times in his kind of assessments of things. But they're, you know what? They kind of like Angel Studios are kind of sticking it in the eye of Hollywood. They're like, you guys only think that you have power.
Yeah.
But when all those guys get on board with denouncing something, it has an effect at the box office.
I mean, they've been
undeniable.
They've been laying the groundwork for the Marvels for months. I mean, months.
And that movie tanked hard. Yes. Hard. Worst producing movie for Disney in the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was terrible, which is good.
No, for sure. But to your point, the Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, Quartering, Ryan Kennel Outpost, all those guys have been.
And Demion. There's a lot of them out there that all do kind of the similar thing.
Yeah, they've been laying the groundwork for the Marvels failing for a while. It's impressive.
How do you guys have the time to listen to these guys? Have you got that kind of time, Greg?
You know what I do?
It's background noise.
But see, like some people can do that. Like I can turn YouTube on in the background while I'm studying, and I can concentrate on studying and doing things while I'm absorbing that from that as well. Not everybody can do that.
My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So it does. It works out for me. Or if I'm driving, I might listen to it on my phone, or whatever. But
and for me, with the way my work is now, right?
Yeah, you've been in a spot where you can.
I'm gone.
You can immerse yourself.
I can't just like stop, and I've got like a 20-minute break that I got nothing to do. I'm in a FBO with literally nothing to do. I can't pull out a book and read it. Just okay, see what they say. And plus, a lot of times I like to get their take before I go spend my money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're all usually only like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they produce very short videos. Anyways, anybody else got anything to say? Unrelated to what we're talking about? For heaven's sake.
Well, you got extra with this episode. You got 4 pastors.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, that about does it for us today. As always, thank you for joining us. If you have a comment or a question or an idea for an episode, send us an email at 3p@athelbaptistchurch.org. Guess what? If your idea gets used in the show, you could be the recipient of the now world-famous 3P coffee mug. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Athel Baptist Church and its members for their generous support of this ministry. And again, thank you for listening. Until next time, remember the Great Commission. Go into all the world, reach the lost with the gospel, and build disciples who can do the same. And with that, we are out.